Warwickshire appears calm and historic, but beneath its castles, churches, and quiet roads lie places shaped by betrayal and tragedy, where the past still lingers and silence is never empty. Warwick Castle. Rising above the River Avon, Warwick Castle stands as a symbol of power, authority, and centuries of blood-stained history. Built in the 11th century, the castle has served as a fortress, a noble residence, and a political stronghold. But behind its towers and battlements, many believe the dead still walk bound to betrayal and violent ends. One of the castle's most famous spirits is Sir Fulk Greville, Chancellor of England, poet, and trusted advisor to King James III. In 1628, Greville was brutally attacked in his own home by his servant, Ralph Haywood. The servant had been asked to witness the signing of Greville's will and was enraged to discover he had been left little or nothing at all after years of service. Haywood plunged a knife into Greville's chest before fleeing and cutting his own throat. Though mortally wounded, Greville did not die immediately. He lingered for weeks, suffering from infections believed to have been caused by the crude medical treatments of the time. Sir Fulk's ghost is said to haunt the Watergate Tower. Some witnesses describe him as calm and dignified, betraying none of the agony he endured in life. Others claim his apparition appears twisted, with pain groaning softly as it moves through the tower. Most disturbingly, his spirit has been reported emerging directly from his portrait, stepping out of the canvas and into the room. Another chilling presence is that of a phantom black dog with bloodshot eyes and yellow fangs seen roaming the turrets and grounds. According to folklore, the dog sometimes assumes human form, believed to be that of Molly Bloxham, a 15th century dairymaid accused of witchcraft and beaten to death for allegedly cheating townsfolk. Additional phenomena are reported throughout the castle: a sobbing woman, heard late at night, a little girl seen in the undercroft footsteps, echoing along the Japanese corridor, the sound of marching soldiers, unhappy servants, whispering, and chains clanking in empty rooms. Visitors have also reported hearing horses' hooves approaching the castle gates, followed by silence. Some believe this is connected to echoes of battle from 1217, when rebel forces attempted to overthrow King John nearby. Paranormal investigators believe Warwick Castle hosts both intelligent and residual haunting spirits, aware of their surroundings, alongside echoes of violence replaying endlessly. Warwick Castle is celebrated as a monument to English heritage. But when the crowds leave and the towers fall quiet, many believe the castle reveals its true nature. Here, power was gained through loyalty and lost through betrayal, and some who died that way never truly left. Warwick Arms Hotel. Standing on the high street in the historic town of Warwick, the Warwick Arms Hotel is a familiar sight to locals and visitors alike. By day, it blends quietly into the rhythm of the town, welcoming guests with traditional comfort. By night, however, one particular room has gained a reputation that unsettles even seasoned staff. The Warwick Arms has existed in various forms for centuries, serving travelers passing through the town near Warwick Castle. Over time, countless lives have intersected within its walls, some briefly, others more permanently. Unlike locations with elaborate legends, the haunting here is defined by a single, deeply disturbing apparition. Guests and staff have reported sightings of a faceless woman appearing in one of the hotel's bedrooms. Witnesses describe seeing a female figure standing silently within the room, often near the bed or doorway. Her clothing appears old-fashioned, but her most terrifying feature is the complete absence of facial details: no eyes, no mouth, no expression. Encounters are brief but intense. Those who see her report an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the air has suddenly thickened. Some describe being unable to move for several seconds, frozen in place, while the figure stands motionless. In many cases, when witnesses blink or look away momentarily, the apparition vanishes. No clear historical identity has been linked to the faceless woman. There are no confirmed records of murder or suicide directly associated with the hotel, which only deepens the mystery. Paranormal researchers suggest the figure may represent an anonymous spirit, someone whose identity was lost, ignored, or erased during life. Additional phenomena have been reported in the same area. Doors have been found unlocked after being securely closed. Sudden cold spots appear in the bedroom without explanation. Some guests report the sensation of being watched while lying awake at night, even when no movement is visible. Skeptics argue that fatigue, unfamiliar surroundings, and suggestion can produce vivid hallucinations, especially in hotels where guests are already uneasy. Yet several reports come from individuals unaware of the room's reputation prior to their experience. Unlike dramatic hauntings filled with noise or movement, the Warwick Arms disturbance is quiet and restrained, which many find far more unsettling. The faceless woman does not scream. She does not approach. She simply appears long enough to be seen, long enough to be remembered. And for those who encounter her, one question lingers long after checkout. If a spirit has no face, was it ever truly seen in life at all? The St. Peter's Church. Set on a gentle rise near the village of Wootton, Warwick St. Peter's Church appears peaceful and timeless, surrounded by fields and ancient paths. Yet the land around it has long been associated with unrest, resentment, and spirits tied to conflict rather than comfort. In the 12th century, the area was occupied by French monks who controlled local rents and land. Their presence was deeply unpopular among English farmers, who viewed them as outsiders exploiting the countryside. Tensions ran high, and although the priory itself has vanished, many believe the monks never truly left the land. Witnesses have reported seeing figures dressed in monastic robes walking slowly up the hill toward the church, particularly at dusk or in early morning mist. These figures are silent and distant, often appearing in groups before fading into the landscape. Others have described seeing robed shapes wandering the nearby fields where the priory once stood. The churchyard itself is said to be haunted by a far more dramatic figure, the Squire of Edstone. According to local legend, if a hunting horn is sounded nearby, the squire will leap from his grave, mount a phantom horse, and pursue the fox across the countryside. Though rarely witnessed, directly reports persist of hoofbeats, rushing wind, and a sense of movement racing past the church grounds. Some visitors describe sudden drops in temperature near the graves, accompanied by the feeling of being watched. Others report hearing faint chanting or low voices carried on the wind, despite no one else being present. The atmosphere is often described as uneasy rather than overtly frightening, a tension that seems tied to the land itself. Paranormal researchers suggest St. Peter's Church may be the site of residual hauntings where emotionally charged routines replay under specific conditions. The repeated sightings of monks following the same routes support this theory. The squire's legend, however, suggests a more symbolic presence, a spirit bound to pride, power, and obsession. Skeptics argue that folklore and imagination play a strong role in rural hauntings, especially in places layered with history. Yet many encounters are reported by people unaware of the stories before their visit. St. Peter's Church remains a place of worship and quiet reflection. But when mist gathers on the hill and the fields fall silent, some believe the past still moves through the grass, walking, riding, and remembering old grievances that were never forgiven. Here, faith did not bring peace. It brought echoes that still answer when the land is disturbed. Jubilee Inn. Standing along Bromsgrove Road in the village of Studley, the Jubilee Inn looks like a typical English pub, modest, familiar, and welcoming. Yet behind its ordinary appearance lies a history of quiet but persistent paranormal activity that has unsettled staff and visitors for decades. Before major alterations were made to the pub in the late 20th century, witnesses reported seeing an elderly man seated alone at a table in the corner. He was described as small, with grey hair and only a few remaining teeth. He never spoke, never moved, and vanished the moment attention was drawn to him. No record has ever identified who he might have been. Even more unsettling were sightings involving the shadows of several young girls. Through the glass of a door leading to a passageway, witnesses claimed to see the silhouettes of 4 or 5 girls standing together. They appeared to be wearing bonnets, suggesting Victorian-era clothing. When staff investigated the passage, it was always empty. Whispering sounds were also reported in the same area, low and indistinct, as though conversations were taking place just out of earshot. Despite repeated checks, no source was ever found. In more recent years, the nature of the activity has changed, but not disappeared. The bell behind the bar is said to ring by itself, often when the pub is quiet or closed. Staff have heard it clearly, only to find no one near the counter. The cleaner has reported hearing the sound of a young girl laughing late at night, followed by the unmistakable noise of a ball bouncing across the floor. On one occasion, a brief glimpse of a young girl playing was reported, a fleeting image that vanished almost instantly. These child-related phenomena have deeply unsettled those who experience them. Unlike aggressive hauntings, the atmosphere at the Jubilee Inn is described as eerily calm, as though something is replaying moments of childhood without awareness of the present. Paranormal investigators suggest the pub may host residual hauntings where emotional imprints from the past repeat under specific conditions. The lack of direct interaction supports this theory. Skeptics argue that reflections, acoustics, and expectation can explain much of what is reported. Yet the consistency of accounts across different witnesses remains troubling. The Jubilee Inn continues to serve its community as it always has. But when laughter echoes without children present and the bell rings with no hand to touch it, some believe the past has found a way to remain. Here, not all memories fade. Some keep playing long after everyone else has gone home. King's Court Hotel. Tucked away in the village of King's Courton, near Alcester, the King's Court Hotel is a quiet country establishment known more for weddings and overnight stays than ghost stories. Yet for those who work here after hours, the building carries a subtle but deeply unsettling presence. The hotel occupies a site with a long and layered history. Over the centuries, it has served as a private residence and gathering place, witnessing lives shaped by secrecy and strict social boundaries. Unlike dramatic hauntings marked by apparitions, the disturbances here are defined by physical sensation, the feeling of someone being present when no one can be seen. Several members of staff have reported similar experiences. On one occasion, a staff member clearly saw someone walk into the dining room and heard the distinct swish of the door closing behind them. When the room was checked moments later, it was completely empty. A manageress later described feeling someone invisible brush past her in a narrow corridor, causing her to jump in shock. The sensation was unmistakable, close, deliberate, and human, yet there was no one there. Perhaps the most disturbing incident involved the head chef. While walking upstairs to his accommodation late at night, he heard footsteps following closely behind him. Upon entering his room, he felt the distinct presence of someone entering with him. The feeling lingered for several moments before fading, leaving the room silent and empty. Although such incidents are rare, they are consistently described in the same way: sudden, brief, and intensely personal. There are no cold spots, no loud noises, just the certainty that someone else is there. Local legend offers a possible explanation. It is said that during the Civil War period, a cavalier secretly met a much younger woman in the courtyard of the house. Her parents strongly disapproved of the relationship, forcing the couple to meet in secret. Both are said to have died under mysterious circumstances, though details were never recorded. Paranormal researchers suggest the activity at King's Court Hotel may be an intelligent haunting, marked by awareness rather than repetition. The close personal nature of the encounters supports this theory. Skeptics argue that stress and expectation can heighten perception, especially in quiet buildings at night. Yet those affected insist the experiences felt undeniably real. The King's Court Hotel remains peaceful and welcoming. But when the halls fall silent and footsteps follow where none should exist, some believe the past is still walking close behind, repeating a presence that never learned how to let go. Carton Court, set within rolling countryside near Alcester Coton Court, is a striking Tudor manor house closely linked to one of the most infamous conspiracies in English history, the Gunpowder Plot. While the house is celebrated for its architecture and lineage, many believe its walls still carry the anxiety and fear of a family waiting for disaster. Carton Court was home to the Catesby family, including Robert Catesby, one of the principal figures behind the failed attempt to blow up Parliament in 1605. While Robert was deeply involved in the plot, his wife, Mrs. Catesby, was left behind at the house, unaware of how close her family was to ruin. According to legend, Mrs. Catesby became increasingly restless in the days leading up to the plot's exposure. She paced the rooms nervously, unable to explain her unease. Witnesses over the centuries have reported seeing a woman dressed in a pink 17th-century gown walking slowly through the tapestry room or descending the stairs toward the south wing. Her expression is often described as tense and distracted, as though anticipating bad news. This apparition is believed to be Mrs. Catesby eternally replaying the anxiety she felt while unknowingly standing on the edge of catastrophe. Footsteps are frequently heard in the same areas, particularly late in the evening, even when the house is empty. The legend continues with the arrival of King James III's forces, who stormed Carton Court shortly after the plot failed. The household was arrested on suspicion of complicity, though they were later released after convincing authorities they knew nothing of the conspiracy. Despite their release, the shock and fear of that moment is believed to have left a permanent mark on the house. Visitors and staff have reported sudden drops in temperature, the feeling of being watched, and a heavy atmosphere in the rooms associated with the sightings. Some describe an overwhelming sense of tension, as though the house itself is holding its breath. Paranormal investigators suggest the haunting at Carton Court may be residual, an emotional imprint, replaying moments of intense stress and anticipation. The repetitive pacing supports this idea. Skeptics argue that knowledge of the Gunpowder Plot heightens imagination. Yet many sightings have been reported by those unaware of the house's connection to the conspiracy. Carton Court stands as a monument to loyalty, secrecy, and political danger. But within its halls, some believe one woman is still pacing, waiting for news that has already changed history forever. St. Nicholas Church. Standing quietly on Butter Street in the market town of Alcester, St. Nicholas Church appears calm and unassuming. Its stone walls and modest churchyard suggest peace and reflection. Yet this church is linked to a figure whose violent death left a mark felt far beyond the walls of Warwick Castle. St. Nicholas Church is closely associated with Sir Fulk Greville, the Chancellor of England, whose ghost is also said to haunt Warwick Castle. Greville is buried here, and it is near his tomb that his apparition has reportedly been seen not wandering but standing still, as though bound to the place of his final rest. Witnesses describe seeing a tall male figure, dressed in a dark velvet suit, wearing a white linen ruff, typical of the early 17th century. He is often observed standing slightly apart from the main body of the church, watching silently before vanishing without movement or sound. His presence is brief but unmistakable. Unlike the dramatic manifestations reported at Warwick Castle, the atmosphere at St. Nicholas Church is subdued and restrained. There are no loud noises or sudden disturbances. Instead, visitors describe an intense stillness as though the air itself becomes heavier near the tomb. Some report sudden chills while standing in the churchyard, even on warm days. Others describe the unsettling feeling of being observed from just outside their field of vision. Footsteps have been heard on gravel paths when no one is present, stopping abruptly when attention is drawn to them. Paranormal researchers suggest this may be an intelligent haunting a spirit aware of its surroundings, but choosing not to interact. Greville's calm appearance here contrasts sharply with the agony attributed to his ghost elsewhere, leading some to believe this church represents his final refuge, rather than his suffering. Skeptics argue that churches encourage quiet contemplation, making visitors more sensitive to suggestion. Yet several sightings have been reported by people unaware of Greville's burial location or ghostly reputation. St. Nicholas Church remains an active place of worship, welcoming visitors seeking peace. But near one particular tomb, some believe a man who met betrayal at the hands of a trusted servant still lingers, not in pain, but in solemn remembrance. Here the past does not shout or demand attention. It stands quietly to one side, waiting to be noticed. Ragley Hall, set within rolling parkland near Alcester Ragley Hall, is a grand, stately home surrounded by ancient trees, long driveways, and quiet fields. From a distance, it appears elegant and timeless. Yet the grounds and hall itself are closely associated with a collection of ghostly figures, many of whom seem bound by longing and unfinished lives. One of the most frequently reported apparitions is that of an elderly woman, seen standing just outside the main gates. Witnesses describe her as waiting patiently, as though expecting someone who never arrives. She rarely moves, and when approached, she vanishes without sound. Another long-standing legend centers on a spectral maid who appears wearing a long white gown, often compared to a wedding dress. According to local tradition, she was involved in a forbidden relationship with an Italian valet employed at Ragley Hall. One day, both vanished without explanation and were never seen alive again. Since then, the maid has been reported walking the grounds alone, her presence quiet and mournful. Ragley Hall is also associated with a far older presence. In 1833, an Anglo-Saxon grave was discovered within the estate grounds. Shortly after, sightings of a ghostly figure standing near the burial site began to circulate. The figure is usually still observed briefly before dissolving into the air, leaving behind a feeling of unease. Perhaps the most dramatic legend linked to Ragley Hall involves a white lady riding a white horse. On moonlit nights, witnesses have claimed to see the pair galloping across the grounds before leaping over a spring near an ancient oak tree. Both horse and rider vanish instantly after the jump. In the same area, the sound of a large unseen animal has been heard moving through the undergrowth, despite nothing being visible. Inside the hall, staff and visitors report cold spots, unexplained footsteps, and the sensation of being watched, particularly in quieter rooms. The atmosphere is often described as heavy rather than hostile, suggesting presence rather than threat. Paranormal researchers believe Ragley Hall may host multiple layered haunting spirits from different eras bound to land, love, and loss. Skeptics argue that such estates naturally inspire folklore, yet the consistency of sightings across generations remains striking. Ragley Hall stands as a symbol of heritage and continuity. But when night falls and the grounds grow silent, many believe it becomes a place of waiting for lovers who never returned, for riders who never slowed, and for figures who still search the paths they once walked in life. Shuckburgh Hall. Nestled in the quiet countryside near Upper Shuckburgh Hall is an elegant estate surrounded by open land and narrow country roads. While the house itself appears peaceful, the surrounding area is marked by one of Warwickshire's most tragic and disturbing love stories, a tale that many believe still replays itself in silence. The legend centers on Lieutenant Sharp, a soldier who fought during the Napoleonic campaigns. During his visits to Shuckburgh Hall, he fell deeply in love with Lucy Shuckburgh, a young woman from the family. Their relationship was strongly opposed by Lucy's father, who viewed the lieutenant as unsuitable and ultimately forbade him from returning to the house. After much pleading, Lucy's father agreed to allow the couple one final meeting. The rendezvous was arranged on the road leading toward Napton-on-the-Hill, a quiet stretch of countryside chosen for privacy. What happened next shocked the community and sealed the legend. According to local accounts during the meeting, Lieutenant Sharp suddenly drew a pistol and shot Lucy in the head. Moments later, he turned the weapon on himself, ending his own life at the roadside. The motive remains unclear. Some believe despair and obsession drove him to murder. Others suggest a twisted belief that if he could not have her, no one else would. Since that day, sightings have been reported both near Shuckburgh Hall and along the road where the deaths occurred. Witnesses describe seeing a male and female figure standing together by the roadside, often at dusk or in low mist. The figures appear solid at first, then slowly fade away. Drivers have reported sudden cold patches while passing the area, accompanied by an overwhelming sense of sadness. Some claim their vehicles briefly stalled or their radios cut out near the spot. Footsteps have been heard along the road when no one is visible, stopping abruptly when the sound is acknowledged. Within the grounds of Shuckburgh Hall, staff and visitors have reported the feeling of being watched and unexplained movements in quiet rooms. Though sightings inside the house are rare, the atmosphere is often described as tense and emotionally heavy. Paranormal researchers suggest this may be an intelligent haunting, driven by unresolved emotion rather than routine. The repeated appearance of the pair together supports this theory. Skeptics argue that tragic folklore easily shapes expectation, especially in isolated rural settings. Yet many encounters come from those unaware of the story. Shuckburgh Hall stands as a reminder that not all hauntings are born from anger or rage. Some are born from love that ended too violently to be forgotten. And on a quiet Warwickshire road, two figures are still said to meet forever, trapped in the final moments of a decision that could never be undone. Hall's Croft. Located in the old town of Stratford-upon-Avon, Hall's Croft is a beautifully preserved 17th-century house, best known for its connection to William Shakespeare's family. Once the home of Dr. John Hall and his wife Susanna Shakespeare's eldest daughter, the house is steeped in intellect, medicine, and quiet domestic life. Yet beneath its refined surface, something unsettling is said to remain. One of the most frequently reported apparitions is a figure seen peering down from a first-floor window. Witnesses describe a man dressed in Elizabethan clothing, watching silently from above. This figure is widely believed to be Dr. John Hall himself, a respected physician whose life was dedicated to healing, yet whose presence now unsettles rather than comforts. Visitors have also reported unexplained footsteps running up and down the staircases, particularly when the house is otherwise quiet. These sounds are sudden and energetic, echoing sharply through the wooden structure before stopping without warning. Perhaps the most disturbing experiences involve physical sensations. Several visitors have described feeling a firm push on their back while climbing the stairs, as though someone is urging them forward. The sensation is brief, but forceful enough to cause shock and imbalance. This phenomenon is often linked to the spirit of Betty Leggett, a woman who died in a fall at Hall's Croft in the years before the First World War. Local stories suggest she may not have fallen accidentally, raising the possibility that her presence is tied to unresolved trauma. Additional reports include doors creaking open on their own, sudden cold spots near stair landings, and the feeling of being closely observed in otherwise empty rooms. Unlike violent hauntings, the atmosphere at Hall's Croft is described as tense and watchful, as though the house itself is alert. Paranormal researchers suggest the site may host both residual and intelligent hauntings. Repetitive sounds, such as footsteps, may represent imprints of past routines, while the pushing sensation suggests a presence aware of the living. Skeptics argue that old staircases and narrow spaces can create physical illusions. Yet many witnesses experience the same sensations independently, often without prior knowledge of the stories. Hall's Croft is preserved as a place of learning and history, but for some visitors, it offers a different lesson entirely, that even in houses built for family medicine and reason, the past can still reach out, unseen, unexpected, and impossible to ignore. If these stories made you pause, reflect, or feel something unfamiliar, share your thoughts in the comments. Which place stayed with you the longest? Subscribe to Creepy Experience for more true hauntings, because understanding the past helps us listen more closely, even to the silence.